such a time as this.
And welcome to For Such a Time as This interview. I am going to interview with us today Jim. Jim, I think you can do a better job than I can introducing yourself. So please introduce yourself to our audience.
All right. Thank you very much, Pastor Pittman. Okay, so my name is Jim Tolford. I grew up in the Chicago area.
The thing is, I just said Jim. I didn't know if you wanted to throw your last name out there. That's why I let you do it. So go ahead.
Well, the secret's out now.
Yeah, the secret's out now. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the Chicago suburbs, and I was very blessed to have a very good education, and I'd always been interested in foreign countries. I studied Latin from the age of 10, French from the age of 12, and our family was presented with a very special opportunity in 1979 for me to study Chinese in Beijing, China.
Unbelievable.
So, yep, it was pretty amazing. And so I decided to take advantage of that chance, and in 1981, I left for France. I studied in France for half a year, and then after that, 1982, I went to Beijing and studied in Mandarin Chinese language in Beijing from 82 to 83. After that, I came back to the United States, did about 6 months of university, and then I went to Taiwan in 1984. I studied Chinese in Taiwan, and then after that, 6 months, I came back, graduated from college. I tried to find a job to send me back to Beijing or Taipei, and I couldn't find one, so I bought a one-way plane ticket, and I went to Taiwan and stayed there for the next 30-some years.
30-some odd years in business, right?
Yeah. Well, I went over there as very young, so I taught English as a foreign language for many years. I became academic director at the most successful private English language school in Taiwan. Then my wife and I did sales and marketing for 9 years, and then I had opportunity to learn neurolinguistic programming with one of the top teachers in the world. I worked with him as an assistant for 6 years or so, and then I started working as a corporate trainer and working as a sales support with cultural guidance and translation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So Jim and we met, and I said, Jim, you've been gone for so long, and you actually came back to the States just recently. When did you come back into the States?
Well, we'd been coming back and forth since about 2013, but when the COVID hit, just before the COVID hit, family reasons and so on, I came back here and have been here solidly for the last 2 years.
Okay, and so it's interesting, as we were talking, it was just that you had, the last time you lived there full-time was in 2000, you say?
No. You mean
lived
full-time?
In the States.
Lived in the States. Oh, well, full-time was that would have been 1980.
1981.
Yeah.
And so you just came back to live full-time in the States in when?
2 years ago, at the beginning of the COVID, 2020.
So 2020. So we're talking
a long time.
39 years.
Well, yeah.
39 years.
On and off, but yeah.
On and off, but living here full-time 39 years ago. And so I asked you, I said, Jim, you left the States in 81. You came back in 2020. What's different? And you basically said, where do I start?
Yeah, right. Well,
where do I start? And so this is what this interview is about. This interview is what has changed from your perspective since 1981 to 2020, and how has because see, when we've been here, I've been here nonstop since 81.
Yeah.
So the frog has been boiling since 81. I can't tell, as most people can't tell, what's different.
Yeah.
And so now I ask you, Jim, for our viewers, what's different? And Jim typed up this big, long sheet of paper, and I was like, well, let's do it. Explain to us, for the frogs the frogs have been here since 81, explain to us the boiling process that we missed What's different from 81 to 2020 now that you're here? And so you've got the list. So take it away, Jim.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much, Pastor Pittman. And
Yeah.
I really have to say thank you for giving me the respect of inviting me onto your podcast.
Sure.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Anyhow, I think kind of an interesting perspective to take on this question is to, let's put it this way. When I left the United States in 81, we didn't have fax machines. Okay, there were no fax machines.
Gotcha.
So this is before the fax machine.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, the technological change is one thing. But let's take an interesting perspective on this, and that is the way that mainland China and Taiwan looked at the United States in the early 1980s and how they look on it now. Okay, so I was really kind of surprised when I was in China in 82 and 83. I discovered that many people in China considered that the two most powerful countries in the United States were the United States and Taiwan.
How is that possible if they consider Taiwan part of China?
Well, it wasn't a country per se, but it was definitely an independent political entity.
And they
under
consider
a different
Taiwan
government.
more powerful than themselves?
Yeah, because they were like, well, look, we're so impoverished and backwards, and Taiwan is so economically advanced. How did they become so economically advanced, and we're so economically backwards? We're all Chinese, so what's the difference?
And the fact that one was free capitalism and one was communism never entered their mind.
Well, it might have entered their mind, but it sure didn't come out of their mouth.
After all the word China, you said, I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. So the whole idea was like, how could the United States, which is such a young country, only 200 years old, how can they make so much progress in such a short period of time? And Taiwan, why are they so economically successful and we're so economically backward when we're all Chinese? So the question came to their mind is, if they can do it, why can't we? Now, back in those days, the early 80s, late 80s, Taiwan was coming out of an authoritarian fascist political system and into a fully democratic system. And that's an amazing story right there. That's another topic for another day.
Yeah, and that fascism was not connected to mainland China's government.
That is correct. That is correct. That was in mainland China. That's the People's Republic of China, communist country. In Taiwan, we have the Republic of China, and that is That was a nationalist government.
Okay.
And so there's an argument to be made that the Chiang Kai-shek Republic of China government was largely a fascist government. But let's put it this way. It was certainly authoritarian.
Sure.
And you could still get in trouble for expressing the wrong opinions.
Sure.
But they made a peaceful transition from an authoritarian society to a fully democratic and open society.
In early 80s.
Without a civil war.
In early 80s.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Throughout the 80s, yeah.
Gotcha.
So I was there. I saw that firsthand. It was pretty amazing. So anyhow, nowadays, there's a pretty common perception that the United States it's too democratic, that the Americans have kind of lost their minds.
Is that in the 80s now?
No, now to these days today.
Who's saying that?
The people on the street.
In what streets?
Just everyday people.
You mean in the United States of America?
That in China and in
China.
Taiwan.
And China, Taiwan, that America is too democratic.
It's too democratic. It's too open. Now, in the 1980s in Taiwan, and in China, but it was more restricted in China, of course, but in Taiwan with a more open society, there was a great affinity for American culture, a huge affinity. I mean, there used to be a big business of coming to the United States, recording the 1980s MTV shows on VHS and bringing them back to Taiwan and playing them in pubs and bars in Taiwan because you couldn't get MTV over there, right? So it was really something to bring these bootleg tapes.
This was before the internet.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And people were fascinated. There was just a huge affinity for American culture. People really looked up to it. You know, days of Michael Jackson and, all of that stuff. And but nowadays it's like people are really questioning whether they really want to have anything to do with what's coming out of the United States right now.
Is it more because of the immorality or what?
Yeah, it's just kind of like, wow, things that seem to be quite obvious are actually questioned in the United States whether they really exist or
Yeah,
not.
like what's the definition of a woman?
Well, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
that type of thing.
Gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha.
they're like, "What are you guys crazy?"
Gotcha, yeah.
And so
Yeah, we
there's
are,
kind of like a feeling that
we
they
are.
don't want that coming into their society.
Sure.
And so what you've seen is a shift away from affinity for American culture and now a very strong affinity for Korean culture.
No, wait a minute. So what you're saying is the foolishness coming out of the United States, such as what is the definition of a woman, and a Supreme Court justice not able to answer that which is obvious to us, but the embracing of, I guess, the immoral, what they would consider the immoral standards we are now embracing and promoting, you're saying is having a detrimental effect around the world, that they're looking at Americans saying, how crazy. If this is what America is, they don't know the difference between men and women. Their society is now failed. We want nothing to do with it.
We're not buying what you're selling.
Wow.
We're not buying what you're
See,
selling.
you won't hear that other places.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we're not buying what you're selling, because you've lost contact with reality. There's
Yes,
too much
yeah.
chaos, the riots, the social, the lack of social cohesion. I mean, you have to understand that
That's
Taiwan
hurting us. around
Taiwan
the
is
world.
very much of a monoculture, okay? Whereas in the United States, we're a wildly diverse
Yep.
society. But
Yep.
what we've done now is we've taken each element of society and pitted it against each other.
Yes, and they can see that.
And they over there, they see that and they say, yeah, we don't want that here.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, American music was all over the place. But, a lot of the music that's coming out of the United States now is kind of like, hey, you listen to the words and you listen to the way it sounds. And
Wow. And so the immorality is hurting us around the world.
well, and the tonality, just even just the way it sounds. So there's a lot more affinity for like the Korean culture now.
Yeah.
The K-pop groups.
You mean a
and-
culture that knows the difference between boys and girls? That culture.
Well, that's an interesting question, Pastor Pittman, because that China now is starting to crack down on, they're trying to build up their boys to be more masculine.
Yeah.
Now. There's they're even saying we don't want what's coming out of Korea, right?
Okay.
Because you watch the shows, and the males are very, very effeminate
In Korea.
in Korea, yeah, on the TV shows, okay, and so there's starting to say like, hey, shouldn't our boys be like men?
Yeah, our
and
boys should grow
and
up to
our
be
girls be
men.
like women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our boys should grow up to be men, not grow up to be women. Wow.
Yeah.
Jim, I don't think we've ever, in our discussions, I don't think you touched upon that. But it makes sense.
How much time do we have?
Well, I can tell you right now, we're already 13 minutes into, and we have meetings after this. We're going to come back and do a part 2, Jim. But go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
sure.
Go down your list.
So anyhow, so what happened? Okay, what happened? What happened? What happened while I was gone? What did you guys do to the place?
That's a good question. I don't know, because I was in the water being boiled.
I
Jim.
was like, whoa, hang on. What is this place?
Yeah. And so
Did I get off? Did I take the wrong plane or something?
So you didn't recognize the States when you came back in 2020?
Well, I think a lot of things that we're seeing today have been things that have been en train. They've been in process for many years.
Yeah.
I think that back in the 80s, we could see the beginnings, the genesis of these changes, but now they're really coming to. I think they've come to full flower, and now they're going to pot. They're going to seed.
Such as what?
Well, I think that
you're right. I know you're right, but
Mm-hmm.
you could see it better because you left for 40 years and you came back. While I was here being boiled, some wicked stuff in the 80s was starting to come out. And it's just grown.
Yeah. Well, I think that probably one of the biggest things that we've seen here is the replacement of objective truth with subjective narrative.
Yes.
That there's no longer a search for truth and beauty. There is a search for hedonism and materialism.
And for people who don't know hedonism, what hedonism means, it means the search of pleasure at the expense of all.
At the expense of all.
That's
Yes.
hedonism, yes.
Yes. And, we saw that starting.
Yes, we started.
We saw that
it,
starting
yes.
in the 70s,
Yes,
and,
yes.
and in the 80s,
Yes.
but it was still quite innocent back then.
I don't know how innocent it was. It just wasn't full grown.
In
back
comparison,
then.
in
Yes,
comparison,
yes,
what we see today,
Yes,
it wasn't
yes.
so full grown exactly. So anyhow, and then we've seen the replacement of subjective perceptions and narrative over truth. The important thing isn't what's true anymore. What's important is the narrative, the story about it.
Yeah.
We often hear, which I didn't hear before. I don't remember hearing this before. The whole idea is like, well, this is my truth. You see, you have your truth, and I have my truth, right?
Yeah,
and it's my truth, and it's your truth, which then naturally, very, very easily lends itself to power dynamics.
Yes, truth
because whose narrative will prevail?
Yes, truth is now subjective. It's no longer objective. Yes.
Yeah, it's no longer objective. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so confusing perception with reality.
Yeah.
There's an old saying in neurolinguistic programming: the map is not the territory. So when you take a look at a map, it's not the actual surface of the Earth.
Yes.
It's a representation.
Representation,
and
yes.
the map might not be entirely accurate.
Yes.
Okay, if we take a map of Palatine from 60 years ago,
Yeah.
okay, you're not going to find your way around
No,
because
you'll
the
be
roads
lost.
aren't.
Yeah.
It's completely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the whole same thing is that we each see the world through our own through our own senses, and there are certain distortions, there's certain deletions, there are things that we miss. You saw something that I didn't see. I heard something that you didn't hear, and so we each have more or less of a warped perception of reality. But if we can get all together and share what our perceptions are of reality, we can come to a little bit more of an accurate understanding of what it is, But that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Now it's all, no, my narrative is supreme. And creates a lot of division in society and a lot of confusion, a deracination, an uprooting. There's no more sense of, who I am and what is life. It's all really leads to, I find, a high degree of meaninglessness.
Yeah. So you're saying that when objective truth is removed and the narrative is the only anchor we have, it leads to a meaninglessness.
Yeah, exactly. It leads to a meaninglessness, and I'll tell you an interesting story. Just the other night, I met up with my old buddy. He's really more of a brother than he is a friend. We've known each other since the third grade, and we get together every month, and we go out and have a burger and a beer. And we were at the bar, right? And bartender, great guy, awesome bartender. Just really anticipating everything that you need. Service was awesome. We were sitting there. We were talking about things, and got on to talking about how I thought that Amazon's quality of Amazon service had really dropped down, and it seems to be kind of a mess over there from what I can see. And then the bartender piped up and he said, "Well, that's because their standards are too high." I said, well, what do you mean by that?
What does that mean?
He said, they've got really strict marijuana testing. He said, everybody's smoking and doing edibles. He said, so nobody can pass the urine test. And so they can't get good people. He said, like me. He said, I used to drink, but I don't drink anymore. Now I just smoke. He said, now here's the money quote.
The standards.
Here's the money quote. You have to have something to look forward to.
Wow, that is so sad.
You have to have something to look forward to.
This
is what it is.
Sad.
Right. So I mean, look, where's
goodness.
What is there to look forward to in life besides getting high?
That is so sad. That is so sad. That the only thing that man admitted to you to looking forward to is getting high on marijuana. That is his apex in life. That is his God.
Now, we used to have that before, but not on the scale that we have it today.
But at least listen. At least it was your job or a woman or marijuana.
Exactly.
I mean, you. At least the idols were better in the 80s. Is that what you're saying? The idols were better.
Hey, like you said, it's like, hey,
Yeah.
I have a career. I'm building a career. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm building a family. Hey,
Yeah, because those things in and of themselves aren't evil. Having a good job, a man should have that. Having a good wife, a man should have that. Having a good hobby is not evil in and of itself. But marijuana, the very nature of tricking your mind and being divorced from reality, that's the purpose of marijuana. And if that is your idol, if that's your apex, wow.
Now, Pastor
Wow.
Pittman, I'm going to admit to you right here. Now, everybody listen to this. I am no angel myself. Okay, all right.
I understand.
I've been there. I've done that.
I got you.
But I mean, the fact of the matter is, at one point, you wake up, you say, "Hey, wait a second. There's something more
Yeah.
to our existence
Yeah.
than the latest iPhone
Yeah.
or playing these video games or partying on the weekend." At a certain point, I feel really grateful that I kind of like got it thrown in my face a little bit of, wait, hang on a sec. You're missing the point, man.
Mm-hmm.
There's a much bigger meaning out there. And you got to find out what that is.
Sure.
You got to get aligned with that.
Sure.
There is truth. It's not your truth is not your pursuit of pleasure or money or whatever it is. There's more to it than that.
And that's the difference. In the 1980s, you had beach bums who knew they were beach bums.
Right, yeah.
Now you have beach bums who think the world revolves around them.
Well, and that's the
That's the difference.
The narcissism, okay?
Yes.
The narcissism.
Yes.
And that's another thing that I've noticed is the growth of narcissism. And I think a lot of that comes from, the lack of meaning. We don't, there's no meaning in life. I mean, and the more that we pursue the images or the false idols, the more confused we become. And we start to wonder, well, what's this all about?
But Jim, I don't think they don't even have that perception that. See, when you say the term idol, that in and of itself is a Christian term, right? When we say idols, we mean that what you put before God is not good. I'm not even sure people have that baseline anymore, right? If you remove God completely from the equation, then the term idol means nothing to me. Right? Because I am my God. I am my God. And I think what people are starting to recognize in 2022 is that we are so far gone from the concept of a holy and righteous God who defines reality, that a woman who is up for the Supreme Court can tell you she cannot define what a woman is and she's not terminated immediately from consideration. That is amazing to me, Jim. Amazing to me.
Well, Pastor Pittman, I couldn't have said it better myself. But what I have discovered now is that after all of these years, I come back, I discover that there is a huge thirst for meaning. And there's a huge thirst. People are going like, hey, wait, hang on a sec. I'm 30 years old. I'm 35 years old. And I'm looking around me and I'm saying, there's got to be something better than this,
But do they even ask those questions anymore, Jim?
There are people who do.
Sure.
You know the old saying,
Sure.
you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink? Well, then what do?
Put salt in his food.
Well, I would say that you could do that, or I'd say go find a thirsty horse.
Yes.
And I think that, with all of the... Another thing that I've noticed is the coarseness of the culture. What passes for comedy these days? I mean, it's just being it's like being outright rude to people. And you saw that thing about at the Oscars the other day of Will Smith going up and hitting Chris Rock because Chris Rock said nasty things about his wife, and it's like, and this is entertainment. Wait, hang on a second. back in the 80s, you didn't have quite that much. I think it started in the 70s, and it's like, today comedians are going for clapter instead of laughter, right? It's all about, being in your face and being rude and being coarse. And that just does not have the international appeal, the worldwide appeal. Yeah.
So internationally, that's looked down, that's frowned down upon internationally.
Why would you be mean to somebody?
Wow.
Why would you be so sarcastic to someone?
Wow.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So the culture around the world, the U.S. culture, is being rejected around the world.
It's not at a high point.
Oh, wow.
It's not the high tide, that's for sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then the other thing I've seen too is the safetyism. Now, we saw it before. There was a little bit of it. I remember back in the day, the baby car seats were becoming more popular, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a baby car seat, but what I am saying is that as we replace objective truth with narrative, we don't have the confidence to face the world because we don't know what's going on. We can't make sense of it. There becomes a high degree of risk. I mean, Pastor Pittman, this is not necessarily the country that put a man on the moon as it was in 1969. There's a lot more concern for, fear of risk than there was before. And so people would much rather, and I just hate to see people who are living in fear of phantoms or so afraid that they don't know that they can mitigate and control and manage risk to lead a fulfilling life of growth and contribution because they don't know what the truth is.
They're afraid.
Yeah.
There's a much greater sense of fear and apprehension in our culture now. Right?
Yep. And so, there's a saying in Chinese. It says, 危机就是转机. Okay?
Yeah, you're going to have to translate
危机
that
就
now.
是转机. Okay? Crisis is opportunity. Crisis is opportunity.
Wow.
And I think that we're soon coming to a point where people are saying, hey, wait, hang on a sec. This is not working. There's got to be a better way. And there's going to be a need for people who can step up and say, hey, if you think anything I say makes sense, let's get together and talk about some possible solutions and how we might be able to implement them putting forward. If you think that anything that we're saying here makes sense, well, let's get together and have a chat and talk about some possibilities. And if any of the possibilities make sense, let's make some plans.
We are fast approaching out of timeness. What you literally have here in the interview is a man who has stepped out of a time capsule, who left the United States in 81, not completely, but have left the United States in 81, and has come back to the States here in 2020, and was shocked about what he saw in the country he left 39 years ago. Again, you were off and on here since 2013, but didn't move back to live here full time until 2020. And so next time we come on, we've got to have a part 2 now.
Okay, I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
When we come back, I mean, what are some ideas, since you can see what many of us can't see in the last 39 years? What's lacking? Then maybe we'll go over what could possibly be done about it from a Christian perspective, dealing in a world in which objective truth no longer exists, and the narrative now is more important than truth itself. What can be done? Jim has some ideas, and we'll go through them the next time we're here. Last words, Jim.
Well, Pastor Pittman, thank you very much for this opportunity to share
Thank you.
with you and your listeners.
Thank you.
I really feel that it's time to step up, and it's time to support people out there who are looking for answers. It's
Yes.
time to step up and find the thirsty horse.
Got it. Thank you, Jim. Till next time. Thank you.
All right.
For such a time as this,